They say she was born in a thunderstorm, that her mother made a deal with the devil, that she could prophesy the future, and that when she came into this world, she cackled instead of cried. But what if I told you that one of the strangest tales about Mother Shipton might yet have been told? Mother Shipton was said to be a seer, a healer, a woman born under strange circumstances. They said the devil was her father, and that her laughter echoed through the woods the night she came into the world. Her story is one of prophecy and poison, fear and fascination. The locals of her time whispered of devils and dark pacts, and her name became entangled through history with prophecy, healing and witchcraft. Her cave is today England's oldest tourist attraction, marketed since 1630 as the home of Mother Shipton, drawing in those who are curious, sceptical or simply spellbound by the strange. We're here for those reasons, sure, but in this episode we're here to look closer at something more elusive, a forgotten thread, a family rumour, and the possibility that Mother Shipton left behind more than visions carved in verse. Hello friends and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Claire and this is the Wanderlust Way. Firstly, let me say thank you to everybody that supports this channel by liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing. Honestly, everything that you're doing is helping the channel to grow and it's allowing me to continue bringing you on these adventures and sharing these stories with you. So thank you. Okay, so today is something a little bit unusual and a little bit personal. So my great-grandmother was born by the name of Blanche Shipton. I only sort of really found out about this when I started looking into my ancestry not that long ago for other reasons. And what I found was that years ago she would sit down her grandchildren and she would tell them stories about how she was related to a famous Yorkshire witch called Mother Shipton. Now, when I first heard these stories, I thought they were absolute nonsense, probably the sort of thing that people would say to keep the grandchildren quiet. But then I came across a 16th century pamphlet that opened up lots of more questions about this story. And I started digging even further and I thought the time has come, Claire, to visit Mother Shipton's cave and learn about that story. So here we are. If you're feeling curious too, pull up a chair. That's enough waffle. Let's wander. Now the reports do vary, that's just how history folklore works, but we need to imagine ourselves around the year 1488 with a young 15-year-old girl by the name of Agatha. She brings herself to a field somewhere near Knaresborough and she sits under a tree crying. She's an orphan, she's unhappy, until somewhere on the horizon a handsome stranger approaches. He approached the weeping girl with soft words and a kind manner, and something about him felt comforting. She leaned toward him, letting him gently wipe away her tears. Agatha had nothing left to lose, so when the stranger offered her a life of ease, warmth, protection, a future, she believed him. All he asked was that she be his. Now it's easy for us, centuries later, to think that something in this story isn't quite right. And if you're thinking that this is where the tale gets darker, then you'd be correct. Because this, according to some versions, is where Agatha made a deal with the devil. From here the story fractures. Some say he whisked her away to hell to seal the pact. Others claim he lay with her right there in the field beneath the open sky. Either way, the devil vanished, and soon after, Agatha realised she was with child. In a time when being an unwed mother was met with harsh shame, the village demanded to know the identity of the father, but Agatha refused to speak. Rumours started to take hold of demons, of dark bargains, of unnatural unions, and before the baby could even be born, the villagers had cast her out. She fled into the woods and found refuge in the cave. And it was there, in the middle of a raging storm, with thunder shaking the heavens, that Agatha gave birth to a baby girl. They say the baby born near this cave was not normal. Those there on the night of the birth said they heard her cackle instead of cry, and the rumours only got stranger from that moment on. She named her Ursula, a girl born in lightning and thunder, cradled by the rocks and raised on the edge of civilization. Ursula and her mother Agatha are said to have lived here in this very cave for the first few years of her life. A teenage girl, just 15, abandoned, shamed, and forced to survive alone with a newborn. The cave offered little protection, cold, damp, and haunted by the dripping of the well that turns the living world to stone. And yet somehow they survived. For 2 years, maybe longer. The stories differ, but what they all agree on is that the people in the village had no interest in helping a girl they believed had slept with the devil. They watched from a distance, they gossiped, and they let the forest swallow her whole. Eventually word reached the church. According to legend, it was the Abbot of Beverley who stepped in. He ordered Agatha to be taken to a convent far away and arranged for Ursula to be fostered by a family in Knaresborough. Sadly, Agatha died in the nunnery just a few years after being there, and the two of them never saw each other again. But the story of Ursula was only just beginning. Even as a toddler, Ursula was strange, quiet, observant, and impossible to ignore. One story tells of her foster mother returning home to find the front door blown open and a terrible wailing inside, like 1,000 cats howling in unison. After searching the house in panic, they found little Ursula perched on the iron bar above the fireplace, naked, laughing, completely unharmed. No one could explain how she'd gotten there, but the whispers began again. And as she grew older, Ursula spent more and more time alone. She didn't mix with the other children, not that they wanted her to. Her body was bent, her back hunched, her nose long and crooked, her legs twisted like roots. The other children called her names: Devil's Bastard, Hagface, Witch's Spawn. And when you get called a monster long enough, you soon learn how to play the part. The reports tell us she was clever, too clever perhaps. She remembered everything. She answered before questions were finished, and when the children mocked her, things had a habit of going wrong. One tale speaks of a group of town officials laughing at her when she passed by their window. Moments later, one man found his ruff replaced with a wooden toilet seat, another's fine hat turned into a chamber pot, and a third, well, he grew horns so wide he couldn't leave the room. They said it was a trick, a hallucination, but no one laughed at her after that. Stranger still were the events inside the home. Cutlery flying across the room, pots boiling with no fire beneath them, strange lights seen flickering around her at night. Her foster family stayed quiet, but the town was watching. They watched her as she walked into the woods with baskets and books. They watched her gather herbs and roots. And when people got sick, some began to come to her for help, quietly at first. Things for Ursula were becoming a little bit dangerous. She wasn't a child anymore, and she was something quite remarkable, something that people feared, but ultimately needed at the same time. As she grew older, she turned more to the forest, not this time to hide, but to listen. She learned to read nature like a book, the curve of a leaf, the scent of a root, and the way a flower would open just before a storm. Herbs became her language, and the forest her classroom. She wandered the same woodland paths her mother had once fled through, gathering plants that most wouldn't notice: foxglove, feverfew, mugwort, yarrow. Some she ground into pastes for wounds, others she hung above doorways for protection. They called her a witch, but when fevers came or childbirth turned dangerous, it was Ursula they sent for. She knew the old ways, remedies passed by whispers and instinct, and in time, something else began to stir. She started to know things. Who would marry? Who would fall ill? When the weather would turn? Her words came in riddles, half-formed at first, but when her predictions started coming true, people began to listen. By the time she reached her 20s, Ursula had become something of a paradox. Feared, yes, but needed.
visited in secret by the same people who crossed the street to avoid her by day. And then something unexpected happened. A man named Mother Shipton, a local carpenter, respectable, skilled and far from poor, asked her for her hand in marriage. No one could believe it. They said she must have bewitched him, cast a spell, slipped something into his drink maybe. But Tobias, he wasn't afraid. He saw something in Ursula that others didn't. Maybe he liked her sharp tongue and sharper mind. Maybe he needed a bit of magic in his life.
So they got married, Ursula the Witch of the Woods and Toby the honest tradesman, and it was said that on their wedding day she smiled wider than she ever had before.
They lived together in York for just over 2 years, and by all accounts they were happy, or at least peaceful, until Tobias died suddenly. No accident, no clear cause, just gone. And once again the finger was pointed at Ursula. She'd cursed him. It was bound to happen. You can't marry the devil's daughter and expect to live. The whispers returned, louder than ever, and this time Ursula didn't argue. She packed her things and she walked back to the woods.
She went back to the cave, back to the place where her story began. Here she perhaps felt safer, and for this time she stayed. Now, I picked up this book in a second-hand bookshop in Sedbergh. It's full of Mother Shipton's prophecies, and the book was actually written in 1881, although this copy is from the 1970s. And this is before I'd even started looking into Mother Shipton's claims. Now, usually if I go into a second-hand bookshop, I don't really go in with a list. I just see what I find. I like to have a good rummage, but this book jumped out at me, and now I'm wondering if it happened for a reason.
It is important to point out that Mother Shipton's prophecies were passed on in rhyme, scattered fragments of warning, wonder and strange glimpses of the future. Some were short and sharp, others were pages long, tangled in old language and open to all kinds of interpretation. But some hit a little too close to home.
When carriages without horses run, old England will be quite undone.
The invention of trains, or carriages without horses, did indeed come true, and England, if not the world, did change because of it.
And then there's this one. Let's see what you think about this one. This is one of my favourites. Around the world thoughts shall fly in the twinkling of an eye.
Of course, the internet, emails, satellites, information travelling faster than we can even process. She couldn't have imagined the technology, but she knew something was coming.
And the history fans out there are going to like this one. A virtuous lady then shall die for being raised up too high.
This line, many believe, refers to Lady Jane Grey, the young woman who was crowned queen but reigned only 9 days before she was imprisoned and beheaded in the Tower of London.
Her death shall cause another's joy, who will the kingdom much annoy.
A likely nod to Queen Mary, who restored Catholicism, or popery, and whose reign was marked by religious executions and deep unrest. But then there's this one, often quoted as a doomsday prophecy.
The world to an end shall come in 1881.
That one, thank goodness, didn't quite pan out, but even so it sparked a fair bit of panic at the time and reminds us just how powerful prophecy can be, even when it's wrong. Even if you don't believe in seers and visions, it's hard to ignore how many of her lines did add up. The Great Fire of London, the death of Wolsey en route to York, the rise of female rulers, the list goes on.
And we'll finish off with one final one, which you guys might want to debate in the comments, let me know. It is, the north shall rue it wondrous sore, but the south shall rue it for evermore.
It's never been pinned to one moment in history, but the north-south divide in England, in politics, economy and culture, well, many say that's a real thing even today. But what do you think? Are these just poems dressed up as prophecy? I mean, hindsight is of course a wonderful thing, but could some of her verses still be working, waiting in the background? I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
It was dangerous for a woman like Ursula, a healer, a prophet, a woman with secrets. And if you've watched my video on the Pendle witch trials, you'll know just how fast fear can spiral into accusation. And in Mother Shipton's times, fear could be like a tinderbox.
Ursula Shipton, known to many today as Mother Shipton, lived in a time when women who stepped outside the ordinary were treated with suspicion, even dread. Her knowledge of herbs, her uncanny predictions, her mysterious origins, it all stirred unease in a deeply religious, patriarchal society. By the time she returned to that same cave where she was born, her reputation had grown too large to ignore. Some sought her for healing, others whispered she was a witch. Henry VIII himself might have referred to her as the Witch of York in a letter to the Duke of Norfolk in 1537, a hint that fear and fascination followed her straight to the royal court.
That's right, even royalty had their eye on her. But unlike the Pendle witches, she was never executed, and instead she simply faded into legend. The historians all tell us the same, that Mother Shipton died childless, which puts all of those fireside stories told by my great-grandmother to bed. However, I've found out about a historical pamphlet which tells of a secret child, a daughter by the name of Peggy.
Every reputable historical record, every mainstream biography and scholarly source agrees. Ursula had no children. She married a carpenter named Tobias Shipton, but when he died in 1514, there's no evidence of children born to them. So why does this shadowy tale exist? Perhaps because it plays into another interesting narrative, something else for people to debate. Or perhaps, after a life marred by shame, obscured parentage, a cave birth and brutal gossip, she would rather hide any trace of motherhood. Maybe she feared for her child just as she feared for herself. Official records don't exist, but that doesn't always mean the story isn't true. History from the 1500s is messy. Records were lost, stories were embroidered, and women like Ursula, unwed mothers, healers, wanderers, could easily vanish from the archives. That's where family legend steps in, where whispers across generations, like those from my great-grandmother Blanche, keep a seed of mystery alive. I'm sure we've all got fascinating stories hidden in our blood somewhere.
With the help of my good friend Sam, we've managed to trace my family tree right back to the year 1646 to a Henry Shipton, but after that the trail goes cold.
My great-grandmother Blanche believed we were connected to Mother Shipton. Whether it was pride, fiction or family lore, I just don't know. But if a woman who could have been labelled a witch could survive, could she also hide a child?
Well then, so we've visited the cave. We have seen where the Mother Shipton was supposed to have been born and lived. I have also listened to those stories told by my great-grandmother Blanche. Now this is a picture of Blanche in case you wanted to put a face to the name. This is a clipping from the newspaper on her 90th birthday. Anyway, Mother Shipton. So the tale is mixed up in myth and in legend, so it's really, really hard to find a definitive answer on this one. However, if you're watching this video, then that means one thing. Your ancestors were survivors. They will have survived through plague, through war, through famine, and possibly through some kind of persecution at some point. And that's why you're here. That's why I'm here. And I think that there's so many stories that are running through our bloodlines, and that's real history in human form. And I think that's the real magic in this story, because a lot of our instincts and a lot of the things that we are probably drawn to could have come from those ancestors. And that's amazing. I just want to say a huge thank you before we go any further. A huge thank you to, of course, Mother Shipton's Cave for allowing me to film there, because a lot of places are saying no when I ask them to film. If I can film. And I also want to say a huge thank you to Sam, because he was the one that had the patience to dig through my family tree for me, and he went back right through the Shipton line for me. So that was really, really great. Really, really kind of him. And then I also want to say a big thank you to my dad, who came on this madcap adventure with me. But of course, he was there when his grandma was telling those stories. So it's important. It's part of his history too. And he did get roped in to do a little bit of camera work. So thanks, Dad. But also, of course, a big thank you to you guys, because without you, this channel would not be possible. So I will hope you've enjoyed the adventure. If you do have some of your own stories to share, have you had a look into your own family tree? Have you found anything unusual? Let me know in the comments, because I love to read your stories as much as I love digging in and finding out my own. So until next time, well, next week, I hope you stay safe, stay curious, and I will see you on the next episode. Take care, bye.